There are so many urban legends out there that have existed in folklore and in culture for so long, and every US state has a lot, and today I'm gonna cover the scariest one from every US state. Shout out to this Reddit post. I am taking a lot from this, so shout out, but not all. Some are other ones that I chose. Also, we got so many guest appearances in this video, guys. Just wait, it's gonna be awesome. It is mostly me though, so sorry. But let's get into it. I'm actually gonna go from bottom to top alphabetically, so I'm gonna start with Wyoming and then make my way all the way to the A's, because I wanted to be special and different. But before we get into this, be sure to subscribe if you want more videos like this. I have an Instagram and a Discord. Go follow, go join, let's hang out, let's talk, and yeah, let's get into this, starting with Wyoming. For Wyoming, the urban legend is the ghostly Platte River ship. This urban legend originated when 3 different early pioneers of Wyoming each saw an ancient ship that is said to have apparently drifted down like mist upon the Platte River. And you would never guess, but the ship brought death with it. The Cheyenne Bureau of Psychological Research apparently recorded these sightings directly from the eyewitnesses themselves. The first sighting was from a man named Leon Weber in 1862. And remember, these are the early pioneers of Wyoming. Did we not fucking discover Wyoming until 1862? I thought that's like when cars were made. Whatever, man, fuck the American school system. Anyway, Leon Weber decided to build a log cabin for his sweet sweetie, and the site he chose was located on the Platte River. He was building this cabin when apparently he looked upstream on the North Platte, and he reported being startled to see a gigantic ball of fog riding on the surface of the water. Weber ran toward this thing, I guess to find out what it is, and out of the mist came a boat. He could hear faint sounds of rowing and of, like, seamen yelling boat person commands. Weber said that the men started staring at him with a blank face while in a circle. Apparently he also saw the ghost of Margaret Stanley, who I had to Google for this video, and apparently she was like English royalty or something, so personally, I don't know, go eat some beans and stab someone, Margaret. Also, I want to point out this because it's funny to me that Weber said that he yelled Margie, so I guess they were friends. The ship disappeared and he waited, but it never came back, and later he told investigators that he left Wyoming because of this ship, because whenever he got back, he learned that his sweet sweetie for whom he was building the house was dead. The next sighting was from a man named Gene Wilson in 1888. He was rounding up some stray cattle along the Platte and his dog began barking at the river. Also, I forgot to mention this, but the first guy, Weber, his dog was also barking at the ship. Anyway, back to Gene Wilson, he, guess what, also said that he saw the ship. He also saw sailors and he saw the corpse of his wife. Whenever he got home, he found that his wife was also dead, just like Weber. Finally, Victor Heeb. He was chopping trees in 1903 when he saw a huge ball of fire on the river. He saw a dead loved one's corpse and then later found out that the dead loved one had died while he was watching the ship as well. Not a wife this time though, it was a friend named Thomas. This story appeared in the Fate magazine in 1948, which was co-founded by a fiction writer named Vincent Gaddis, who also happened to write about half the content in the magazine. People have tried researching this Platte River ship to verify its story. For example, the magazine said all of the interviews and first-hand accounts were, again, connected by the Cheyenne Bureau of Psychological Research and was, done by that organization. But the skeptics actually found that there is no evidence that this organization ever even existed. So this whole thing is just complete fiction. Actually, this is cool as fuck. This Vincent Gaddis guy, he coined the term Bermuda Triangle. So he's a great fiction author, I guess, which sadly makes this urban legend most likely false. It's a cool as fuck idea though, shout out Wyoming. This is probably the coolest thing that you guys have going for your state. Also, I was gonna do a bit in the script where I look up famous people from Wyoming and mention one of them like, oh, and also this guy. But I tried, and there's absolutely no one cool from Wyoming. Except maybe Dick Cheney, he's just funny. The next state we have is Wisconsin. The urban legend from this state is the Rhinelander Hodag, who, according to the Cryptid Wiki, is referred to as a fearsome critter. In 1893, newspapers reported the discovery of a hodag in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. It had, quote, the head of a frog or a bear, Which, pause real quick already, bro. Those heads look completely different. Like, how are you going to confuse the head of a frog and a bear? But anyway, continuing, quote, a large lizard-like body, large protruding tusks, the horns of the bison, the grinning face of a giant elephant, thick, short legs set off by huge claws, the back of a dinosaur with spines, and a long tail with spear at the end, end quote. The reports were seen as most likely the opening to a prank, because there was a fucking awesome guy named Eugene Shepard who was locally well known as a prankster, and he rounded up a group of people to capture this creature. And the group he created also said that they were going to use dynamite to kill it, so this guy is officially my hero. Like, imagine being known as a local prankster and being famous for that. A photograph of the remains of the blown up, charred animal was released to the media, and we actually still have it. This image is so cool. Shepard went on to claim he had captured another hodag in 1896, and this one was taken alive. According to his reports, he and, quote, several bear wrestlers placed chloroform at the end of a stick and got him that way. He ended up bringing it to a county fair and was charging money from people to see it. So he basically was a con man, and he later admitted that it was a hoax, because a bunch of scientists from the Smithsonian said that they wanted to come down and look at it. But Shepard said that the hoax part was that he had captured one. He posits that the actual hodag was real, he just hadn't actually captured one. And since then, the hodag became the official symbol of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, with it being the mascot of the high school, the county festival, the website, a whole bunch of shit, and there's even a huge statue at the Rhinelander Area Chamber of Commerce. The next state is West Virginia, and the urban legend for West Virginia is the White Things. So little is actually known about the origin of these. The earliest thing that I could find is that a student in Kanawha County may have claimed to see one, but that's the first mention I could find, at least. But the White Things really became popular in 1965 when Dr. Ruth Ann Musick published a book called The Telltale Lilac Brush and Other West Virginia Ghost Tales. So basically, it seems that this tale of white things was popular and a vocal story told by people, and the first time it was ever really written down was in this book. Musick wrote that these creatures can be seen as revenants in animal form, but also she said that even that isn't a good explanation. These things are so weird that they're hard to describe their purpose, apparently. She said, quote, "The creatures in these stories are difficult to identify or explain. Unlike ordinary ghosts, which have some kind of rationale, creatures seem to have no connection with the real world. They sometimes resemble real animals, but are never quite like them," unquote. Now, what do these white things actually do? There was one folktale about them submitted by Thomas A. Burford in 1954. The story goes that there was a woman who was riding home from church one night and saw a white thing. It was larger than a dog, but not as big as a horse. It has razor-sharp teeth and, quote, screamed like a woman in terrible agony. So she was hurrying to get to her house, and she eventually left her horse behind for some reason. Anyway, when she got back outside the next day, the horse was torn to bits. So yeah, these little white things are genuinely terrifying, and I love a good folktale like this. Next up is Washington. For Washington, I'm going to be cheating a little bit. So first, I considered covering the Black Lodge, which is my favorite urban legend maybe ever. It's been a urban legend for hundreds of years, and then David Lynch and Mark Frost appropriated it and, kind of took inspiration from it and included it in their show Twin Peaks, which is one of my favorite shows ever, but it didn't seem like it would have a wide enough audience. Bigfoot is here, but that's too obvious. Then I saw that there was the Caddy of Cadboro Bay, and it was from that Reddit post. But then I found out that apparently it's only ever been spotted in the Vancouver side of Cadboro Bay. But after searching for a while, I'm still gonna cover this caddy. It's rumored to exist in the bay, which is still partly in Washington, so it counts. Sorry, Washington people. At least you guys had the coolest football team name for a year. The Caddy of Cadboro Bay is an alleged sea monster that is described as a long serpent-like beast with flippers, hair on the neck, and a camel-like head. It's somewhere between 40 and 70 feet in length, and there have been over 300 claimed sightings during the past 80 years. The first sighting of Caddy was in 1933 by a Victoria lawyer and his wife on a cruise in their yacht. They described a, quote, horrible serpent with the head of a camel. The creature shows itself again in 1934 when 2 members of the provincial government reported seeing the creature, the same description as the first sighting. 2 fishermen saw it later that year and said it was 60 feet long. Now, it gets crazy in 1937 when a photograph of Caddy was actually supposedly taken. No scientist can properly identify the creature here in the photo, but it does look like what people described. Some people have said it could be a Basilosaurus, which is an ancient genus of sea creatures that lived about 33 million years ago. Honestly, that's cool as fuck. I love ocean, sea shit like this, bro. Next up we have Virginia. And for Virginia, we have the Bunny Man. Now right away, this is not referring to Cemetery or Frank from Donnie Darko. Sorry to disappoint. The Bunny Man is an urban legend that most likely originated from 2 incidents in Fairfax County, Virginia in 1970. There's a few variations which we'll cover, but they all involve a man wearing a rabbit costume, or a bunny suit, who attacks people with an axe. And this honestly might be where Cemetery got the idea for that song. One version named a suspect and a specific location. This was posted to a website in the late 1990s by Timothy C. Forbes. This version says that in 1904, an asylum prison in Clifton, Virginia, was shut down by a successful petition of the growing population of residents in Fairfax County. During the transfer of inmates to a new facility, the transport carrying the inmates crashed. Prisoners either were found dead or had escaped and were later found. All but one. During this time, police found the dead body of a man named Marcus Walster, whose remains were left in the same way as nearby rabbit carcasses. They were hanging in trees. Officials then decided to posit that the missing inmate, Douglas J. Griffin, is the murderer, and they name him the Bunny Man. The legend goes that the officials finally locate Griffin, but instead of being taken in, he was hit by an oncoming train. And it was revealed that Griffin was originally institutionalized for killing his own family and children on Easter Sunday. Other versions of the story are variations of this. There's a lot, there's too many to cover, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Next up we have Vermont. And the urban legend for Vermont is the deep frozen people of Vermont. The legend goes that in order to save energy during long Vermont winters, natives would find a way to freeze the elderly in their community and then later thaw them out in spring. On December 21st, 1887, the Montpelier Argus and Patriot published, quote, a strange tale on the front page, and this piece described the aforementioned ritual. The quote-unquote true story is about how a poor northern Vermont family developed the idea of placing their elderly and weakest members into cold storage until spring. It was told as a diary entry, and it's actually a really cool story. I love stuff like this. These are my favorite kinds of urban legends, nature, campfire stories, tales that got told from generation to generation. This kind of folklore stuff is so beautiful and interesting to me. Anyway, news outlets and officials kept this story going for like way too long. Articles and radio shows in the 1930s even were saying the story was, quote, absolutely true. In 1949, research traced the original tale to that 1889 newspaper piece. The author was finally identified as it had been originally published anonymously, and the author's name was Alan Morse, a farmer and storyteller. Apparently, he just wrote the story as fiction, and his daughter ended up submitting it to the paper, and for decades, no one realized it was a made-up horror story. This one is so cool. I love this shit. Next up, we have Utah, and for Utah, I'm talking about the curse on Escalante Petrified Forest. So Escalante Petrified Forest is a little state park in southern Utah. It's basically a hill covered in broken rainbow-colored logs that used to be real trees about 150 million years ago, before the wood slowly got replaced by quartz. A lot of hikers will walk up there and they'll want to take these as souvenirs. The park knows that people think like that, so they don't just say, don't steal. They have a whole legend about it. The legend goes that if you take petrified wood out of the park, your life starts going wrong. Like full-on bad luck, accidents, sickness, money, problems, all stacked on top of each other. A former park ranger told local news that for as long as anyone can remember, they've been getting packages in the mail with stolen chunks of wood and apology letters from people who were trying to get rid of the curse. One of the letters that got read on TV is from a guy who admits he saw the warning signs and he thought that they were just scare tactics. So he took a piece anyway. After that, he says he had multiple serious injuries, his RV caught fire, and his car engine died right after the warranty expired. At some point, he basically panicked, mailed the rock back to Escalante, and begged them to put it back where it belonged because he'd become a true believer, quote unquote. The current staff say they still get letters like that all the time and have a literal box full of them sitting at the park. People blaming all kinds of disasters on like a rock that they pocketed. Over at Petrified Forest National Park, there's actually a huge pile of consciousness letters and returned rocks that someone made a whole photo book out of them called Bad Luck Hot Rocks. The National Parks Conservation Association talks about how hundreds of visitors have mailed pieces back over the years, and they're convinced that this stolen rock really ruined their life. Folklore sites trace that the curse goes back to at least the 1930s, and some writers connect it to older native stories about petrified wood being the remains of powerful spirits that shouldn't be messed with. Next up we have Texas. For Texas, the Candy Lady is the urban legend for this video. The Candy Lady legend originated in the town of Terrell, with roots from the 20th century. A woman named Clara Crane had married an older man with whom she had a daughter named Marcella, who died in an accident. The story goes that, blaming her husband for their daughter's death, Clara killed her husband with poisoned caramel candy. She was later institutionalized at the North Texas Lunatic Asylum, but was later released due to overcrowding. What a mistake they made. After Clara's dismissal, the children in the area began to go missing. Children started finding candy on their windowsills with notes inviting them to, quote, come play. Some children confessed to eating this mysterious candy before they mysteriously disappeared. A police deputy in town began investigating these young disappearances, but he was found dead with a fork in his eyes. This story of the Candy Lady has been passed down for many generations in Terrell, and while some details vary in different retellings, because that's just how culture works, the core elements of the story are still told. It's supposed to be a cautionary tale about trusting strangers and the dangers of being places you shouldn't be. Next up we have Tennessee. Tennessee's urban legend happens to be one of the most disturbing in my opinion. It goes by the name of Skinned Tom. The story goes that a charming, handsome man named Tom lived in rural Tennessee. He won over nearly every girl in his town and began driving to other towns because he wanted to meet even more women. In one of these other towns, he found a beautiful woman named Eleanor, and despite her marital status, they began seeing each other. There was a local lover's lane in town where they would secretly meet. No bad deed goes unpunished though, because at one point, one day, Eleanor's husband found out about the affair. He skinned Tom alive out of anger. But here's where it gets creepy and mysterious. When the cops got there to the scene of the murder, all they found was Tom's skin, the skin that had been removed. The legend goes that to this day, Tom's skinned body roams local lovers' lanes in rural Tennessee with a hunting knife, waiting for a cheating couple to teach them the same lesson that he had to learn. The folklore also even goes that he has his own song. It goes, "Have you seen the ghost of skinned Tom? Long white bones with the skin all gone? Ooh, 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 ooh. Wouldn't it be chilly with no skin on?" And low-key, banger. That's bars, dude. Next up, we got South Dakota. Walking Sam is the urban legend for South Dakota. Hundreds of Lakota Native Americans were killed during the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890. The massacre took place near the Black Hills of South Dakota. Fast forward to December of 2014, between then and the following March, there were 103 suicide attempts made in the same place, the same town, all from people under the age of 26. This is awful, truly. With no leads, people began to point to an old tale that had existed in Lakota Native American tradition. Children raised in Lakota households grow up hearing of stick people, shadow people who attempt to lure children and teenagers from the safety of their homes at night. Over time, and with the explosion of popularity of the Slender Man online urban legend, these stories have likely morphed into one single figure known as Walking Sam. He goes by other names such as Tall Man or Stovepipe, Hat Bigfoot, but Walking Sam is described as a 7-foot tall figure with eyes but no mouth, often wearing a stovepipe hat. When he raises his arms, you can see the bodies of previous victims hanging from them. He supposedly tells teenagers that they're worthless and do not deserve life. Despite this awful nature, some people defend him and say he's not necessarily malicious, but he might be just simply wandering through the forest as a punishment, and is simply looking for companionship. This kind of legend is really interesting, but it's really sad. Very sad. If you're struggling with these kinds of thoughts, please reach out for help. Please be safe out there. Okay, next state we have is South Carolina. The Boo Hag is the urban legend from South Carolina for this video. This urban legend comes from the Gullah people, or Gullah people. Most people don't understand how a paint color could help fend off evil spirits, but you're about to learn. West African peoples were brought to the Americas for slavery in the 1500s. In South Carolina, they were brought to Sullivan's Island and worked on plantations. They banded together and formed great, strong communities as a coping mechanism for the horrible, inhuman, harsh lives they were forced into. Over the centuries, a new culture was born with its own language and folklore. A lot of legends came out of this culture, but one of them was the Boo Hag. The Boo Hag is a cross between a sleep paralysis demon and a vampire. It's a creature of the night. It is skinless with red muscles and prominent blue veins, and extremely reflective bright eyes. This cryptid is sometimes described as having flowing white hair, like the hair that, quote, grows on corpses. This led many older generations to believe that vampires were coming from the dead to feed. According to legend, the Boo Hags use witchcraft and evil magic to cause havoc on innocent people, and will paralyze you in your sleep, like the infamous painting of the demon that sits on your chest in the middle of the night. The lore goes deeper though. According to legend, the Boo Hag looks human during the day, because it cloaks itself with its previous unlucky victim's body. At night, however, it escapes the skin and goes hunting. Where do Boo Hags come from? So your spirit stays behind to guide your descendants, according to Hoodoo. If you stay, but you're evil in life, your spirit will become a Boo Hag. Boo Hags can slip through any crack or crevice in your house at night, once it's in its true form. Once inside, it will find you sleeping and get on top of you, sucking the air from your lungs as you sleep. Now, the Boo Hag is freaky, I guess, because there's an old saying among the Gullah that says, "Don't let the hag ride ya." Now, what did I mean about the paint color earlier? Using indigo color to paint blues on doorways, etc. will keep the Boo Hags away. Legend says it's supposed to trick the spirits into believing they've come across a body of water, which they can't cross. Next state we have is Rhode Island. Mercy Brown is the urban legend for Rhode Island. In the best, most based, most drained Blade Corps town ever, Exeter, Rhode Island, several members of a family, the Brown family, suffered a sequence of tuberculosis infections in the 1880s and 90s. Mary Eliza and Mary Olive died first from this. Eventually, Mercy also fell ill and died. George Brown, the father of Mercy and Mary Olive, was persuaded to give permission to exhume several bodies of his family members. The bodies of the two Marys seemed normal, very decomposed, but the daughter, Mercy, had almost no decomposition, and even had blood still in the heart. Now, Mercy's brother, Edwin, also had contracted tuberculosis, not dead yet. So people in the 1890s, being as smart as they could be, they believed Mercy was undead and the cause of Edwin's illness. As superstition goes, Mercy's heart and liver were burned and the ashes were mixed with water to create a sort of potion for Edwin to drink and overcome the influence of the undead. Edwin died 2 months later. It's not funny that someone died, but it's funny that this bullshit just totally didn't work. And what remained of Mercy's body was buried in the cemetery of the local Baptist church. Next up we have Pennsylvania. The urban legend chosen for Pennsylvania is the legend of Charlie No-Face, or the Green Man. This one honestly is sad. If you've lived much time at all in western Pennsylvania, you've probably heard some version of an urban legend about a strange figure lurking along dark country roads at night. If so, you've heard of Charlie No-Face. Imagine you're driving down Route 351 late at night, a dark road, the world outside enveloped in shadow. Trees follow you on both sides, and you've been driving so long you need to keep yourself awake. Out of sleepiness, despite it, even out the corner of your eye, you see a shape barely lit by headlights. A man dressed in a green jacket and green pants walks by. You notice as you drive past that he has no face. Blank skin where the eyes and mouth should be. No nose. You slam your brakes and turn back, but he's gone. What's the truth though? Where does he come from? At 8 years old in 1918, Raymond Robinson and some of his friends wandered near the Wallace Run Trolley Bridge, which was a popular hangout spot, but it came with a dangerous side catch. It had 22,000-volt electrical lines. Even knowing this and knowing a past story of a boy who had been fatally electrocuted on the same bridge, Raymond accepted a dare to climb up and take a look at a bird's nest on the bridge. 22,000 volts tore straight through him. Somehow Raymond didn't die. He lost both eyes and his nose though, and his arm was burned off at the elbow. Obviously, after this incident, Raymond spent most days indoors, helping his family business of making doormats, wallets, and belts. He avoided going outside as much as possible. However, under the shadow of nightfall, he had nothing to be afraid of. No one could see him. He craved fresh air, so eventually he began using a walking stick to walk along Route 351 with one foot on the pavement and the other on the gravel to stay oriented. But people began to notice. Word spread so much that people would purposefully drive along Route 351 hoping to see Charlie No Face. It's kind of sweet though, because a lot of people were really nice and brought him like beer or cigarettes and even took photos with him. A lot were mean though as well, and this story became an urban legend. Next state is Oregon. For Oregon, we are going to cover the urban legend of the Bandaged Man. The Bandaged Man likes to terrorize motorists on lonely highways late at night, much like Charlie No Face. But the Bandaged Man targets teens. He's said to stink of rotten flesh, and those who have encountered him say he walks with a strange gait, as if his arms and legs are not attached. But he's fast, and he jumps into beds of passing pickup trucks. They say the Bandaged Man was once a normal man, a logger, who was involved in a sawmill accident. They say he fell into a wood chipper. This is why he needs all the bandages. Legend has it that he did get into an ambulance, but a rock slide buried the ambulance he was taken in. This killed the driver, but the victim disappeared. Witnesses say they've seen him eat dogs and bats, which is how we think he survives out there, all alone. Next we have Oklahoma. For Oklahoma, we're going to cover the urban legend of the Men in Black at Shaman's Portal. Located in the penis of Oklahoma is Shaman's Portal, a set of mysterious sand dunes at Beaver Dunes Park. This place has also been nicknamed Oklahoma's Bermuda Triangle. The urban legend starts all the way back in 1541. Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez de Coronado and his men traversed the dunes. According to legend, 3 of his men vanished under the glow of strange green lighting, which Coronado wrote in his journal was, quote, the work of the devil. Apparently, though, he should have known better. Local Native American guides had told them before that the dunes were evil, and the natives called it Shaman's Portal, which they believed was perhaps a gateway between worlds. According to local accounts, people who tried investigating the dunes, whether they were scientists, UFO researchers, or just random people, claimed that they saw mysterious men in dark suits who looked completely out of place in the dunes, even out of place in rural Oklahoma. One of the most repeated stories is about an archaeologist named Dr. Mark Thatcher from Oklahoma State University, who allegedly brought instruments out to the dunes in the 1990s and found weird anomalies in the soil, like ionization that looked similar to a crash site. And then, not long after, men described as looking exactly like the Men in Black showed up and ordered him to stop his work. So who knows? What are these men hiding in the penis of Oklahoma? Is Pulled Pork Park real? I guess we'll never know as long as those men are still there. Next up, we got Ohio. The urban legend we're going to cover for Ohio is another cryptid, this one being the Loveland Frog. This one is so cool. In the 1950s, a traveling businessman was driving late at night along the Little Miami River. He claimed he saw 3 strange creatures standing upright on 2 legs, about 3 to 4 feet tall, with wrinkled leathery skin and froggish faces. According to him, one of them held a wand that emitted fire or sparks. From there, the legend spread violently. By the 60s, fishermen and passers-by would always talk about the supposed frogmen near riverbanks and under bridges in Loveland, which, by the way, is a tiny town an hour north of Cincinnati. Now, we're about 30 minutes into the video, and I thought this would be a good time to prove that I'm not AI. So I'm gonna go away from the microphone like this, because people say that this is something that AI can't replicate. I'm gonna also turn the microphone around like this. I hope this works, guys. I promise I'm not an AI voice. Okay, back to the Loveland Frog. So that original story was in the 50s and 60s, but then in 1972, everything changed. Two separate police officers claimed to have each had their own encounter with the Loveland Frog within weeks of each other. Officer Ray Shockey said he saw something crouched by the road that bolted upright, like a frog, climbed over the guardrail, and vanished into the river. Not even weeks later, Officer Mark Matthews reported seeing the frogman, although unfortunately he later recanted and said he probably thinks it was just an iguana that had lost its tail. And these stories became the most famous accounts of the Loveland Frog. Also, this right here is the most famous picture of one, and holy shit, this looks so cool. I want to meet one, bro. Like W blunt rotation. Next up is North Dakota. We have a weird one here. For North Dakota, we have the legend of the Mini-Washitu. Also known as the water monster of the Missouri River, the Mini-Washitu is a terrifying hairy beast that supposedly travels the Missouri River in central North Dakota. This guy is 7 or 8 feet tall, has tough bison-like hide and fur, has a single eye and a single bison horn above his eye. He also has, like, human hands and a chupacabra's spiny back. Natives to this area, such as the Mandan tribes, would say the Mini-Washitu would control spring breakup by smashing the river ice as the temperatures would rise, and that the creature was more active in the warming temperatures. As far as sightings go, I found one account. It was written down by Melvin Randolph Gilmore, a curator for the North Dakota State Historical Society. He said it was dreadful to see. He said that not too long ago this being was seen by a man. The man saw the creature and immediately everything in his eyesight became dark. He was barely able to get home, and even though he did, once he got home, he lost reason, which I guess means he went crazy, and shortly after that, he died. Guys, I'm so excited. Next up, we have North Carolina, my home state. As I'm writing this, I don't know if it's out yet, I doubt it will be, but I'm also working on a video all about the horrors of the Appalachia, which is a lot of it is in North Carolina, and I'm very excited about that. So for this video that we're in now, I chose a cryptid to talk about North Carolina, the beast of Bladenboro. Bladenboro is a small, tiny community surrounded by pine wood and swamps. On December 29th, 1953, a local woman heard her neighbor's dogs barking and whimpering. When she went out to investigate, she saw a large cat-like creature skulk off into the darkness. This was the very first sighting ever of the beast of Bladenboro, but it wasn't the last. 2 days later, the creature came back, and it came back with a fight. On New Year's Eve, 2 days later, Police Chief Roy Fairs was called out to the farm of Woody Storm. 2 of Storm's dogs had been killed by something large and powerful, and the bodies had been completely drained of blood. More reports came in of people's dogs being attacked by a large creature and dragged into the woods with their blood gone. People said that they saw an animal that was 3 feet long, 20 inches high, with a long tail and a cat's face. Others reported hearing the creature's scream coming from swamps, saying it also sounded like a woman in distress. On January 1st, the bodies of 2 more dogs were discovered. At this point, since the bodies also had no blood, Chief Fors decided it was time he needed extra help. A team of professional hunters came from Wilmington to catch the animal. Chief Fors also interestingly joined them. Then, on January 5th, the worst happened. The beast of Bladenboro attacked a human. That evening, a woman named Mrs. C.E. Kinsella heard the sound of whimpering dogs outside her house. She went out to investigate and saw a large cat-like creature that proceeded to pounce towards her. Mrs. Kinsella screamed and her husband came outside, and the beast was frightened and ran away. And right here is an actual real news article chronicling this. After a human became a victim, even if it didn't end in death, people went ballistic. Bladenboro was overwhelmed with hundreds of hunters, ending in over 600 men from as far away as Tennessee, all joining together to catch the beast. A week later, after fear and darkness and no luck, the hunt was called off. But the fear in the town was palpable. This thing was never caught. Maybe it's still out there, walking around the woods of Bladenboro. Next up, New York is here, and our urban legend for this state comes from Staten Island. It's called Cropsey. Cropsey was an urban legend in Staten Island through the 1970s and 80s. Cropsey was given credit for the disappearances of many children. The legend described Cropsey as an escaped mental patient who lived at the abandoned Willowbrook Mental Institution, who would come out late at night and snatch kids off the streets. Some accounts said he had a hook for a hand, and some accounts said he would wield a bloody axe. But it turns out, after all that, Cropsey wasn't really an urban legend after all. Andre Rand was arrested and convicted of kidnapping and murder. It turns out Rand was a real serial killer and Cropsey was an urban legend made up to explain away his crimes. So everything is solved, right? Not exactly. There are still theories that say that Rand was a Satanist who took the kids for sacrifices. And some say that he wasn't working alone, and that maybe his accomplices are still out there. Next up is New Mexico. For New Mexico, we're going to cover the legend of La Mala Hora. This translates to English as the evil hour. Let me explain the Mexican version of the tale first, and then I'll explain the American, New Mexico version of the tale. La Mala Hora appears as a beautiful, long-haired woman dressed in white, walking along the side of the road at night. She's said to be so beautiful, in fact, that any man who encounters her is so taken by her beauty and seduction that he will follow her mindlessly. Surprisingly, there have been a lucky few who have met La Mala Hora and actually lived to tell the tale. They say that after following her a while, they start to lose their sense of direction. For example, if they carried a lamp, it would stop working all of a sudden. They would also notice that the woman is floating rather than walking, or they would notice that the woman's toes are backwards. Now, what about the version that has become popular in New Mexico? Well, that all starts in 1910. In 1910, Aurelio Espinosa, who was an influential professor, especially in the promotion of the study of Spanish, described La Mala Hora as an evil spirit that haunts the crossroads at night, hunting those who like to travel alone. According to legend, if your eyes see the creature, you will be driven permanently insane. Espinosa also says that La Mala Hora looks like a large lock of wool, or even an entire fleece, that expands and contracts in size before its viewer. It rarely appears in human form, apparently. More modern New Mexican versions of La Mala Hora describe her as a terrifying woman in black, who appears to travelers at night when a death is about to occur. There's a particular story that's floating around the internet of a woman driving alone at night on the way to Santa Fe. She almost literally runs into a demonic woman on the highway. The next morning, she gets news that her husband, who had been away on a business trip, had been killed. Next up we have New Jersey. And for New Jersey, we're going to explore the ghost of Clinton Road. Clinton Road itself is a long, desolate 10-mile stretch in West Milford, and it's often called the most haunted road in America. At night there, it's pitch black and completely isolated. There's a lot of ghosts that are said to haunt this road. The most famous is about a ghost boy. According to legend, if you stop on the bridge that is a part of the road called Dead Man's Curve, and if you throw a coin into the water, a ghostly child will toss it right back at you. Some versions say the boy was killed in a car accident, others say that he drowned while swimming under the bridge. The twist is that people have sworn the coin that they threw in gets placed back on the bridge railing, and that's insane. But again, that's just the famous one. There's many more ghost stories that have come from this road. Some drivers report seeing phantom headlights in their rearview mirror that chase them for miles, acting violent or creepy before eventually just simply disappearing. Others claim that they've spotted a truck barreling down the road that just disappears into thin air. There are also stories of strange figures, shadows darting across the road, cloaked men thought to be cultists, and even ghost animals said to be the spirits of pets released at the nearby Jungle Habitat Zoo after it closed in the 70s. Next up we have New Hampshire. And for New Hampshire, we're going to cover the legend of Goody Cole. Eunice Cole was born in England in the late 1500s and moved to New Hampshire in the early 1600s. From the start, she wasn't the normal, timid, good wife. She was kind of a badass of her time, someone that Republicans today would call a whore. Her troubles started around 1656, when her neighbors began accusing her of witchcraft. They would say that she said curses, they said that farm animals would die if she passed by, and she would even transform into animals according to them. She was tried for this many times, starting in 1956. She was jailed a lot, but unlike women in Salem decades later, she wasn't killed. Instead, her life was just kind of bothered and ruined by constantly going into court, etc. Eventually, she died in 1680. This is where the urban legend really starts. The townspeople were so terrified of her that they buried her body all the way away from any others. They pinned it with a stake through the ground, and they even laid a horseshoe on top of her burial to keep her spirit trapped. And then apparently, this is where it gets weird. I researched this, but like, it got kind of fuzzy. What I came to kind of is that she got her nickname of Goody Cole then because back then, a wife was called a good wife, and that got shortened into Goody Cole because her name is Eunice Cole. And then over time, she got legend status, like whenever storms would happen or animals would die, they just kind of blamed it on Goody Cole. Next up, we have Nevada. Nevada is next, and for Nevada, we're going to cover the spiteful mermaid of Pyramid Lake. For some context, Pyramid Lake is located in northern Nevada, and it holds a very significant place in Native American history and folklore. The lake is extremely beautiful, but is also well known for its many legends and myths, including this one. The spiteful mermaid is a vengeful and evil creature that resides in the depths of Pyramid Lake. The story goes that a long time ago, a beautiful mermaid lived in the waters of the lake. She was said to be beautiful and gorgeous and enchanting, with a perfect voice that could captivate anyone who heard it. But she was a siren. She was vain and cruel. She took pleasure in luring unsuspecting innocents into her waters, killing them. As the legend goes, the mermaid's actions eventually drew the anger and attention of the Paiute people, who have considered Pyramid Lake to be sacred. In response to the evils in the water, the Paiute elders called upon their most powerful shamans to devise a plan to finally get rid of this creature. And eventually, after much deliberation, the shamans cast a powerful enough spell to keep the mermaid stuck at the bottom of the lake. And also, while we're here in my research, I used this wiki page, and it has this hilarious piece of knowledge where it says, there are several explanations as to what the creature could be. Theories include a lake, or a mermaid. I don't know if that's just me, bro, but I thought that shit was so funny. Next up, we have Nebraska. This urban legend might be the newest in the video. It comes from Nebraska. After the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster, tales began circulating that mutated, radioactive hornets had invaded central Nebraska. According to the legend, these hornets grew to 4 times their normal size and wielded a venom 2,000 times more potent than normal. And pause, but am I the only one who didn't know that hornets actually have venom? I thought they just like poke you. Anyways. Apparently this came from National Report, which is a satirical news site like The Onion, but people actually believed it. Come on, Nebraska, get it together. Next up is Montana. In a state as large as Montana, there are bound to be very good urban legends. And guys, let me tell you, I found a good one. Legend says that a phantom hitchhiker is said to haunt Cascade County, near the city of Great Falls. You might have heard this story growing up around there. Let me know in the comments if any of you have actually heard any of these urban legends, honestly. Black Horse Lake is a seasonal lake. It's usually dry except for the spring and early summer. And this area around this lake is home to the phantom hitchhiker. Montana is extremely flat, so it's pretty visible, and the story goes that if you're driving here, someone in the car, doesn't have to be the driver, will suddenly spot a Native American man dressed in all denim on the side of the road. The man will appear to be hitchhiking, but As the car gets closer, he'll jump on the hood and roll across the windshield as if he's been hit by the car. And of course, obviously, people in the car will get out and help him. But by then, the phantom hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake is gone. This could be easily explained by a sleepy driver and imagination, except this has happened many times, and the story is always the same. Many believe that this could be the spirit of a Native American man who was actually hit by a car on this highway, but there's no record of that ever actually happening. And that is halfway, guys. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you get up, move around, get some water, or if you're in bed, make sure you have some water and a snack as we get into the second half of this video. 25 more states. Next up is Missouri. Have you ever run across an old, overgrown road out in the middle of nowhere? These places can be haunted, dangerous, or cursed. But let's take a look at one that is especially creepy. Zombie Road in Wildwood, Missouri. Like most towns along Route 66, Wildwood, Missouri is full of strange stories about ghosts, monsters, and mysterious disappearances. The name itself, Wildwood, actually didn't exist until 1995 though. People lived there, but the town wasn't official until then. Near the Merrimack River, on the edges of Wildwood, there's a small patch tucked away among hills and oak trees. It was originally built in the 1860s. On this path, hikers have reported feeling unsettled, as if they're constantly being watched, and they've said that they hear weird, unexplainable noises along the road. They also report cold spots, which I assume means spots where it's cold, and even report that there are mysterious women who yell at you, but then they disappear when you go to look for them. Sounds like one of my dreams. Legend has it that anyone unfortunate enough to find themselves there at night will be chased and killed by ghostly Native Americans, zombie Confederates, or the revenants of children and manual laborers. There's also a rumor of a fucking giant zombie serial killer. Apparently, back in the 50s, this road was a local hotspot for teens to make out, and around the same time, a crazy guy from a mental hospital nearby ended up there, and he would go out every night and kill teenagers. Kinda like Wyndham Earl. Hey, if you get that reference, elite ball knowledge, let me know. Apparently though, he died there as an old man and was undead, continuing to do the serial killer stuff as not just a zombie, but a giant zombie. This is insane. There's also a theory that says the zombie worked in an orphanage that killed kids, I don't know. Next up we have Mississippi. Mississippi is fucking weird. The urban legend from this state is a disease. Apparently, legend goes that a disease named mercritis came from Europe. Men catch it, right? Then, when they do, they emit an odor. When beautiful women smell the odor, it makes them homicidal. There was a riot in the 1950s during a mercritis outbreak that swept the southern states and was covered up by the government and the medical community. And people would back this shit up. They would say things like, oh yeah, my cousin's friend's nephew, uncles had it. This is an absolutely diabolical urban legend, bro. Next up we have Minnesota. We finally got to Minnesota, one of my favorite states. And you know what that means? We are going to talk about the Wendigo. The Wendigo legend has very deep roots in northern Minnesota and the surrounding Great Lakes region, but to completely understand it properly, you have to look at its origins in Algonquian-speaking indigenous cultures, especially the Ojibwe, Cree, and Saulteaux. Among these groups, the Wendigo isn't just a monster story, it's a real warning and a folktale. In Ojibwe tradition, the Wendigo was said to be a powerful malevolent spirit that could possess people, driving them to cannibalism, madness, and insatiable hunger. In northern Minnesota specifically, stories of the Wendigo spread through Ojibwe communities around places like Red Lake, Leech Lake, and Lake of the Woods. The Wendigo was described as gaunt, emaciated, and skeletal, sometimes towering over humans with glowing eyes and a heart made of ice. In other versions, it was more human-like, a once ordinary person who had been transformed by greed or cannibalism. But I love Minnesota, and northern Minnesota's dense pine forests, frozen lakes, and endless snow made the setting absolutely perfect for these stories. Isolated cabins, hunters lost in blizzards, and families trapped in winter storms. One unique thing about the Minnesota stories is how closely they tie to historical events. During periods of starvation in the 1800s, reports circulated of something called Wendigo psychosis, where individuals feared that they themselves were turning into Wendigos. Some became so convinced that they would try to end a life of themselves so they wouldn't harm anyone. The case of Swift Runner, a Cree man in Alberta in 1879, who killed and ate his family during a harsh winter, is a big example, but it did happen a lot more than just that. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, settlers and missionaries in Minnesota logging towns picked up the story, and it became a staple of local folklore. Lumberjacks in the north swapped Wendigo tales around campfires, combining their own stories and ideas with the classic native ones. Wendigo became everywhere. And the Wendigo really deserves to be so famous. It is such a cool legend. Next up is Michigan. For Michigan, we have the Nain Rouge legend. Nain Rouge is an urban legend, and this creature is seen as an omen of great misfortune. He's said to be a small childlike creature with red or black fur boots. He also apparently has, quote, blazing red eyes and rotten teeth. It's said that if he's seen, it meant bad luck for the whole city. And I mean, I haven't said this yet, but he is native to Detroit, Michigan. The Nain Rouge is said to have attacked the first white settler of Detroit, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, in 1701, and soon after, this settler lost his fortune, according to legend. The creature also apparently appeared on July 30th, 1763, before the Battle of Bloody Run, where 58 British soldiers were killed by Native Americans from Chief Pontiac's tribe. There's a small tributary of the Detroit River where the battle was, and even now to this day it flows through what is now Elmwood Cemetery, and this tributary is said to have turned blood red for days after the battle. The legend also goes that the Nain Rouge was seen dancing on the banks of the Detroit River after this battle. There have been so many sightings of him, like one in 1805 before the famous fire, and one in 1884, but there's honestly too many to document in this video. There's a parade now that is actually honoring this creature, so go Nain Rouge. Next up is Massachusetts. Pukwudgies are the urban legend for Massachusetts. Pukwudgies come straight out of native folklore from the New England area, especially Massachusetts. The earliest accounts trace back to the Wampanoag people, who described them as small human-like forest beings, usually knee-high to waist-high, with gray skin and features that could either look like a miniature human or slightly distorted troll-like faces. This word itself is usually explained as meaning person of the wilderness, or little wild man, depending on translation. I love this kind of stuff, like this kind of legend in particular. I absolutely love the hidden people legend and lore, if you guys know that from Grickle, from Puzzle Agent. I have a hoodie with that shit, bro. I love the hidden people. In Wampanoag legend, Pukwudgies were not harmless fairies. They were tricksters and often dangerous. At first, they were said to help humans, but after the Wampanoag grew too friendly with their cultural hero, Moashop the Giant, the Pukwudgies grew jealous. According to the stories, they started causing trouble, misleading travelers, shooting people with tiny poisoned arrows, and even luring people to their deaths. In some versions, they could shapeshift into animals, turn invisible, or control fire. After they killed Moashop's children, the Wampanoag say the Pukwudgies turned fully hostile toward humans. Massachusetts has a strong local connection because many of these legends were recorded around the Bridgewater Triangle region, which is a stretch of southeastern Massachusetts known for strange folklore. Even in colonial times, settlers recorded native warnings about the little people known in the woods. Today, Pukwudgie sightings still get reported in places like Freetown Fall River State Forest, where the Wampanoag once said the beings lingered. I want to go there, dude. I want to fucking go there. Next up, we have Maryland. And Maryland has another big one, the Goat Man. The Maryland Goat Man legend goes back to Prince George's County in the 1950s to 70s. And unlike some newer internet monsters, this one has roots in real folklore. And I'm saying this because this image of the Goat Man became mega famous. The basic origin story ties him to the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, a government lab in Beltsville, Maryland. According to legend, a scientist at the facility was experimenting on goats, and one of his experiments went horribly wrong. And the result of this was the Goat Man, a half-goat, half-man creature with the strength of an animal and the intelligence of a man. There are a lot of origin stories that got thrown around, but this is the most repeated and popular. There's another origin story though that I also want to mention because it's more folkloric and urban legendy. This one says that instead of being a lab accident, the Goatman is more of a regional boogeyman that haunted lovers' lanes and rural backroads. Reports in the late 1960s and 1970s placed him near Fletchertown Road in Bowie, where teenagers claimed he carried an axe and stalked cars parked in the woods. People told stories of him killing dogs, decapitating pets, and screaming like a goat in the night. Some of these reports were documented in local newspapers at the time, which helped solidify the Goatman as a real menace. There's so many versions and sightings though. Maryland, congrats, because you have a real urban legend. Next up, we got Maine, and for Maine, we got Colonel Buck's tomb in Bucksport. And this one is such a specific brand of New England petty evil, it's insane. So the legend goes that there was this colonel, literally named Colonel Buck, and at some point, a woman got pregnant with his son. And instead of doing the normal, take responsibility thing, he forces her out to raise the baby alone, and then later he has her burned as a witch. Which is already insane because you're not just a deadbeat, now you're like historically evil. But the story doesn't stop there. Apparently, the woman's leg rolls out of the bonfire while she's being burned, and the colonel's son straight up runs off with the leg. Then he grabs it and leaves. And then the curse part comes in. The son supposedly curses Colonel Buck's tomb, and to this day the tomb is said to have this stain shaped like a leg that won't go away. And people have tried to clean it and replace it or remove it, and it doesn't matter, the mark always stays. And legends like this are so funny to me because the proof they have is just a stain, but people will defend this one. Next up we got Louisiana, and for Louisiana, we're talking about the Rougarou. And this is a legend that's really, really old, like one of the ones that I like more, one that like your grandma would tell. So the Rougarou is basically a pale, werewolf-like creature that prowls the swamps. And if you're imagining fog, cypress trees, and that like something is watching me feeling, that's the correct setting. You got it. But what makes the Rougarou interesting is what it's used for. A lot of the stories aren't just monster in the woods. They're like a whole social weapon. It shows up in stories meant to make kids behave. And it's also tied into this idea of punishing people who don't follow religious rules, like hunting down Catholics who don't practice Lent. Which really is a very Louisiana thing to do. Like, bro, you skipped Lent? Enjoy being stalked by the swamp werewolf. Next up we have Kentucky. For Kentucky, the urban legend is the Kentucky Goblins, also known as the Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter. This one is really famous. It's a pillar of American UFO folklore. The story takes place on the night of August 21st to 22nd, 1955, near the communities of Kelly and Hopkinsville in Christian County. A group at a farmhouse reported being attacked for hours by small creatures, described in later retellings as goblin-like or little green men, and they were popping up at windows and doors while the family fired at them. What makes it stick as an urban legend, really to me, is the insane police response. Multiple officers, state troopers, and others actually went out to the farmhouse after the family showed up terrified at the police station late at night. The search obviously didn't turn up any creature at all, but they did find signs consistent with gunfire, broken windows, and holes in screens. After that, the story blew up nationwide. UFOologists treat it as one of the big classic cases, and people who are not dumb treat it as just some people in Kentucky who went crazy and started shooting at random shit. Some skeptics say that owls are an explanation, I guess they were trying to shoot at some owls, which I guess makes sense if you live in Kentucky. But then in the Air Force's Project Blue Book, it was filed as a hoax, so case closed. Next up we have Kansas. For Kansas, the urban legend is the gateway to hell in Stull, Kansas. Stull is this tiny, unincorporated spot outside Lawrence, and the legend basically attaches itself to two places: Stull Cemetery and the ruins of the old Emmanuel Church that used to sit nearby. The most famous version says Stull is one of the 7 gateways to hell, and that the devil himself shows up there twice a year, once on Halloween and once on the spring equinox. From there, the story gets more specific. People claimed there was a staircase at the old church that led down into the ground, and if you found it and went down, you weren't just in a normal basement, it was supposed to be the actual entrance to hell, like that staircase. A lot of the reputation around Stull being cursed got boosted after a 1974 article in the University of Kansas student paper that helped popularize the idea outside of just that one area. So if this video gets 2 million likes, I will go to this staircase to hell. Next up is Iowa, and the urban legend for Iowa is the Villisca Axe Murder House. And this one is pretty crazy because it's kind of like a true crime story. So, on the night of June 9th, 1912, in the small town of Villisca, someone entered the Moore family home and sadly murdered 8 people while they slept. 2 parents, their 4 children, and 2 visiting girls. The weapon was an axe from inside the house, and despite a massive investigation at the time, the case was never officially solved. Over the decades, the house developed a reputation for strange activity. Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported footsteps, voices, and objects moving inside the home. The location eventually became a well-known stop in the ghost hunting world, especially because the original crime scene layout was preserved very closely to how it was found in 1912. Interest in the haunting side spiked again in 2014 when a paranormal investigator staying overnight at the house stabbed himself in the chest during a visit and survived. It's crazy. This one's actually really interesting if you dive like really deep on it. I don't have time for that in this video because holy shit, this is a long video, but like, this one's really interesting. Next up we have Indiana, and for Indiana we have the green-clawed beast in the Ohio River. This one is centered around the town of Quitman. The story describes a human-sized creature with green skin, hairy arms, and long clawed hands that supposedly lurks near the riverbanks. According to local accounts, the creature would grab at women near the water or be seen moving along the shoreline at night before disappearing back into the river. One reason this legend stuck around is the timing. Some versions claim the original sighting happened the same night as the 1955 Kelly Hopkinsville incident in Kentucky that we already talked about, and that led to speculation at the time that the events were somehow connected. That connection actually, in actuality, is mostly a later folkloric add-on, but it did help keep the story alive in regional retellings. Like a lot of localized river monsters, documentation is thin and the story survives mostly through repeated telling rather than any actual strong primary sources. Next up we have Illinois, and for Illinois the urban legend is the ghost elephants of Forest Park. And this one's connected to a real historical disaster. In June 1918, a circus train wreck near Hammond, Indiana, killed many performers and animals, including several elephants that were part of the show. The tragedy was widely reported at the time and became one of the deadliest circus train accidents in US history. From there, local legend took over. Stories began circulating that some of the elephants were buried in or near Woodlawn Cemetery in Forest Park, Illinois, and that their spirits linger. Over the years, people have reported strange nighttime activity in the cemetery area. Heavy footsteps, unexplained sounds, and occasional claims of large shadowy shapes moving between the graves. That historical train wreck is fully real, but of course the ghost sightings here fall firmly into local paranormal lore. Still, the combination of a documented disaster and a cemetery setting is exactly the kind of thing that keeps a regional legend alive for decades. Next up is Idaho. For Idaho, the urban legend is the water babies of Massacre Rocks near Pocatello. This story comes out of local Shoshone and Bannock folklore and later regional retellings. The basic version says that during a time of extreme famine, mothers along the Snake River were forced into an unthinkable situation where some infants were drowned to prevent the entire group from starving. Over time, the legend grew into something more supernatural. According to the modern folklore version, people who sit quietly near the river at Massacre Rocks claim they can hear babies crying near the water, especially at night. Some retellings go further and say the spirits of the infants became strange water-dwelling beings with fins or gills that move just beneath the surface. The details vary a lot depending on who's telling it, but the crying in the dark element is the piece that shows up most consistently. Today, the story survives mainly as just regional ghost lore tied to the Massacre Rocks area along the Snake River. Like many place-based legends in the West, the location does a lot of the work. Quiet river, open land, and a story that people in the area have been repeating for generations and generations. Next up is Hawaii. For Hawaii, the urban legend is the Night Marchers, and this one comes straight out of traditional Hawaiian folklore. The Night Marchers are said to be the ghosts of ancient Hawaiian warriors who march at night in service of the old chiefs and gods. According to legend, they travel along old pathways, shorelines, and sacred routes, especially on nights connected to important cultural or spiritual observances. Witnesses in the stories often describe hearing them before seeing anything: distant drumming, rhythmic chanting, or the blowing of conch shells. That sound is the warning. In many versions of the legend, if you encounter the Night Marchers and do not show proper respect, like lying face down or avoiding eye contact, the outcome is very bad. Some stories say people who looked directly at them were found dead later. The story is treated locally very seriously. In many parts of Hawaii, the Night Marchers are still spoken about with caution rather than just as a campfire story. The details do vary from island to island, but it stays pretty consistently serious. Next up is Georgia. For Georgia, the urban legend is the cursed pillar of Augusta, sometimes called the Augusta Iron Monument. The story traces back to a real historical structure, a cast iron column that once stood outside St. Paul's Church in downtown Augusta. According to local lore, a traveling preacher in the 19th century was told he would not be allowed to deliver a sermon from the church. In response, he allegedly declared that the town would be destroyed and that the pillar would be one of the only things left standing. And then, not long after, in 1878, a massive tornado struck Augusta and caused widespread damage across the city. The pillar did survive the storm, which helped cement the curse in local memory. Over time, the tale became one of Augusta's, most famous pieces of local folklore. Sadly, today, the pillar itself is no longer standing. It was removed in the early 2000s after being damaged by a vehicle. Fucking asshole, bro. Imagine being the guy who damaged this thing. But the story of the so-called curse still circulates in Georgia ghost lore. Next up, we have Florida, and this is one of my favorites in this video, guys. Number one, because this takes place in Cassadaga, which I don't know much about Florida, but I know I fucking love Bright Eyes, and they have an entire album named after this town. And Cassadaga is known for being a long-standing spiritualist community known for things like seances, mediums, and paranormal tourism. And the album by Bright Eyes is all about life and philosophy, and it's beautiful. It's not their best album, by the way, if you're a Bright Eyes fan out there listening to this. Definitely close to the bottom of my favorite Bright Eyes albums, but I mean, it's still like an 8 out of 10 for me. But anyway, I also love this urban legend because it's called fucking the Devil's Chair. What a cool name. The Devil's Chair itself is an actual chair-shaped brick structure located in Lake Helen Cassadaga Cemetery. According to local lore, if you sit in the chair at night, the devil, or some unseen presence, will whisper into your ear. Different versions describe the experience differently, but the core idea is that sitting there alone after dark is supposed to produce something unsettling. The beer story is the detail that made this legend spread wider. People claim that if you leave a sealed can of beer on the chair overnight, it will be found empty by morning. Skeptics obviously point to animals or people messing with it, but the story obviously stuck around. If I hit 1 million subs in the next week, I'll go. Get me there, guys. Next up is Delaware. For Delaware, the urban legend is the corpse light of Cape Henlopen. The story centers around reports of a mysterious phantom light seen near the Delaware coast, particularly around Cape Henlopen. Unlike some lighthouse legends, the detail that people always point out here is that there was actually no official lighthouse operating at the time that the legend claims the light appeared. which is definitely a lot of what made these sightings feel eerie to early retellings. The legend is also often tied to the wreck of the ship De Brock, or other early maritime disasters along that stretch of coast, though versions vary on the exact vessel. One popular version claims the Phantom Light led a ship onto the shoals on Christmas night in the 1600s, resulting in the heavy loss of life. Over time, the story evolved into the idea that the glowing light seen offshore was either the spirits of the dead sailors or a supernatural warning tied to the tragedy. And then also, people also talk about, like later in folklore, they connect the light to a curse narrative involving violence against Native Americans in the region, though historians generally view that part as a much later addition to the tale. But yeah, shout out Delaware, I do love a good Phantom Light tale. Next up is Connecticut, and the urban legend for Connecticut is Annabelle the Demonic Doll. And this one is probably the most famous in the whole video, for obvious reasons. The real story, though, comes from the 1970s and centers on a Raggedy Ann doll that was allegedly involved in a case investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to their account, the doll belonged to a young nursing student in Connecticut who began noticing strange activity. The doll reportedly changed positions on its own, and notes supposedly appeared around the apartment. The Warrens concluded that the doll itself was not possessed, but rather that a spirit was allegedly using it to manipulate the environment. The story they presented claimed the spirit identified itself as a deceased girl named Annabelle Higgins. Over time, the case was framed as more dangerous than a typical haunting, and the doll was eventually placed in the Warrens' occult museum, where it remained for decades. The public's, awareness of this legend exploded after the Conjuring film universe popularized it, but the core Annabelle story had already been circulating in paranormal circles, especially in Connecticut, for years and years. One of the most famous hauntings, for sure. Now, next up, we have Colorado, and for Colorado, I am going to give it over to my friend, Snook. Check out his channel. If you haven't, you probably have if you watch me, but shout out Snook, here we go.
Colorado. DIA, otherwise known as the Denver International Airport, is one of the busiest airports in the United States, and easily one of the strangest. Since opening in 1995, it has become the center of countless urban legends involving secret societies, underground bunkers, and ominous artwork that many believe hides darker meanings. The most famous legend claims that DIA was built on top of a massive underground complex. The airport opened 16 months late and nearly $2 billion over budget, officially blamed on a failed automated baggage system. $2 billion for a baggage system? Sure. Conspiracy theorists argue this explanation is a cover for the construction of secret tunnels meant to house government officials, military operations, or even global elites during an apocalypse. While DIA does have extensive underground maintenance areas, no evidence has ever confirmed the existence of hidden bunkers or secret cities beneath the runways. Another major source of speculation is a dedication stone near the south entrance of the terminal. The plaque includes a Masonic symbol and references the New World Airport Commission, a group that no longer exists. To some, this wording suggests a connection to the so-called New World Order, a shadowy global government said to control world events. In reality, the commission was a short-lived civic organization involved in the airport's development, but the symbolism continues to fuel speculation, and I do agree it's a bit weird. The airport's murals are perhaps the most disturbing element of Denver International Airport. Created by artist Leo Tanguma, the massive paintings depict scenes of war, environmental collapse, and grieving children. One mural shows a masked soldier wielding a weapon, while another features children mourning around a coffin. Though Tanguma has stated the murals represent a journey from violence to peace, I'd say it's very, very weird for an airport terminal. And then there's the infamous Blue Mustang statue, officially titled Blue Mustang, but nicknamed Blucifer. The 32-foot tall horse stands outside the airport with glowing red eyes and an aggressive stance. Its legend grew darker when the statue's creator, Luis Jimenez, was killed during its construction after part of it fell on him, leading many to believe the sculpture is cursed. Rather than denying these stories, DIA has actually embraced them, adding playful references to conspiracies throughout the airport. And whether the legends are coincidence or imagination, Denver International Airport remains one of the most mysterious and talked about airports in the world. And I used to live in Colorado, and I went through DIA all the time, and the airport gives you just a weird feeling. I would not be surprised if some of these conspiracies ended up true, but who knows?
All right, thank you, Snook, for your guest appearance. That was great. And this next one is California, and actually I have another guest appearance for California. This one is going to be covered by Jessica. She is a great YouTuber. Go check her out as well if you haven't already. And
if you ever visit the Santa Lucia Mountains in California between late afternoon and twilight, you may be in for more than you expected. When you're on your journey, you may just notice a dark watcher. We all hate that feeling that we're being watched. I know I get it sometimes, and I'm sure you do too. Usually it's nothing, but in this case, that's far from the truth. Solo travelers in these mountains have often felt that disturbing feeling, but as they look around, trying to spot anything out of the ordinary, their eyes land on an eerie figure in the distance, surrounded by fog. It takes the form of a very tall humanoid figure with a walking stick and a hat. It isn't doing anything in particular, just watching from a mountaintop. Some would run away, but others choose to approach the figure. If they do start to walk towards the direction that it's in, the watcher will simply disappear into the fog that surrounds them, leaving no trace that they were ever there. That is a real story of when someone encountered one of these watchers, but it is far from the only one. There are dozens upon dozens of these tales of watchers from hikers, usually travelers who are on their own. Although there are some differences in each story, the base details always stay the same. The figure stands between 7 and a whopping 15 feet tall, and it always has a walking stick, a hat, and wears a flowing black cloak. No person has ever been able to interact with the figure before it disappeared, although some did try. They always just vanish as soon as they are acknowledged. It's like they don't want to be seen. They aren't really a threat, they just watch, hence the name. But you're probably wondering why we don't have any footage of these watchers, and there may be a good explanation for that. The entities are alleged to only appear to people who are hiking with either no equipment or low-tech gear. We can't confirm this is the case, but it does offer an explanation as to why we have no footage of these figures in the modern world. Some people don't buy that they even exist though, with some claiming that this is simply a case of our brain making patterns out of nothing. You've probably experienced that exact thing before. You're sitting in the dark, you've got a coat hanger with a jacket and a hat. In the dark, your brain could try to make sense of what you're seeing, and you may think that there's an intruder, when realistically, it's just some clothes. That could be exactly what's happening here, especially because if you're hiking by yourself, you may have a heightened sense of awareness. Others argue that saying this is just a brain trick is short-sighted because this urban legend has existed for literal centuries. There are tales as old as time of people experiencing these dark watchers. With so many people telling the story, people believe that it may give it more weight. Hi guys, I'm Jessica. Thank you so much to Poi for having me on the channel. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that I got to educate you about just one of these urban legends. If you want to check out the stuff I make stuff on internet mysteries. I also do a lot on predators online, and also just general other disturbing / creepy internet stuff, morbid content. You can get me at youtube.com/@Jessica, or just search up Jessica and I pray I'll be the first result. So yeah, check me out if you think you would like to see more of my stuff and have liked me from this small extract. And most importantly, subscribe to Poi.
thank you so much, Jessica, for being on my channel. That was great. Now let's get into the next states. Next up is Arkansas. For Arkansas, the urban legend is Dog Boy of Quitman, which is the same name as the town that we covered for Indiana, which is kind of funny. Anyway, the story here is often linked to a real person named Gerald Bettis, who lived in Quitman in the 1970s. Bettis was known locally for experimenting on animals, which is a hilarious thing to be known for locally, and that fueled rumors about him in the community. And over time, those rumors evolved into something much darker. The legend says that after Bettis died, his spirit remained in his childhood home, and he began appearing as a werewolf-like figure that walked on all fours. People in town claimed they saw a shadowy creature moving around the property at night. Some versions say it has glowing eyes and stalks the yard before disappearing. The house itself became the focal point of the haunting, with stories of strange lights and noises circulating for years. And this one is a lot more modern, and it transformed into a full paranormal narrative rather than being an old tale. But this is still very popular in Arkansas. Next up is Arizona, and for Arizona, we have Slaughterhouse Canyon in Kingman. The story takes place during the late 1800s, when the gold rush drew families into isolated desert cabins hoping to strike it rich. According to the legend, a man left his family in their cabin in search for gold and never returned. Days turned into weeks, and the food ran out. With no help coming and the desert closing in around them, the situation inside the cabin became desperate. The version most often told says that the mother eventually lost her mind from starvation and isolation. She put on her wedding dress and killed her children inside the cabin. Afterward, realizing what she had done, she either took her own life or wandered into the desert. Today, the canyon carries the name Slaughterhouse Canyon, and hikers claim that they can hear crying carried on the wind, especially near the old cabin site. Like many western desert legends, the documentation is thin and details shift depending on who's telling it. Most likely completely fabricated, but who knows? Next up we have Alaska. And for Alaska, the urban legend is the Kushtaka, a figure rooted in Tlingit folklore from the southern coastal regions of the state. The Kushtaka is usually described as a shape-shifting being that can appear as either a man or an otter. In traditional stories, it lives near rivers and shorelines and is closely associated with the wilderness and the water. One of the most unsettling traits in the legend is mimicry. Stories say the Kushtaka can imitate the sound of a crying child or the voice of someone you know in order to lure people into remote areas. In some versions, the encounter ends badly for the victim, while in others, the Kushtaka is portrayed as more morally ambiguous and occasionally even protective. And this is another one that's definitely an old, deep-rooted legend. We don't even know how far back it goes. It's crazy. Next up is Alabama, and for Alabama, the urban legend is Dead Children's Playground in Huntsville. This location is real. It sits next to Maple Hill Cemetery, which is one of the oldest and largest cemeteries in the state. The legend started circulating in the late 20th century, when people began claiming that the playground equipment would move on its own late at night. According to the story, the swings and merry-go-round sometimes shift or sway, even when there's no wind. The common explanation inside the legend is that the spirits of children buried in the adjacent cemetery come over to play after dark. Because the playground is physically right beside the cemetery, the setting obviously did a lot to fuel the story's spread. And there's no credible evidence of anything paranormal happening here, even by paranormal standards, but it's still a great legend. And guys, that is, if you've been counting, 50 states. Thank you so much for watching all the way. This video has been crazy and great. I had so much fun making this one. I say that a lot. Fuck, I gotta be more original, but I just love doing this. I love making these videos. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Let me know what you want to see next, and have a great night, everyone. Sweet dreams.